It's the holidays. We're going to go to holiday parties. We're going to eat out maybe a little bit more. We may not be watching our diet. And one thing we need to watch is sodium. Joining us in the studio is Jan Dougan. She is the Health and Human Sciences educator for Purdue Extension. And we're going to talk about watching sodium.
Yes, we are, because as Americans, we tend to eat a lot of salty foods. And especially during the holiday season, a lot of the parties that we go to, as you mentioned, or the holiday gatherings, or the snacks that we have, they tend to be higher in sodium. And so we just want to caution people during this holiday season is to not forget we need to be watching our sodium, and especially those who have chronic diseases, those who are older, those who have hypertension or high blood pressure, and even children. We need to watch the sodium intake for children also.
Okay, well, how can we do that? What are some of the things, the tips that you have for watching your sodium?
So I think one of the first things to realize is that ask yourself, where am I getting most of the sodium in my diet? And I think for most of us, it is not the salt shaker. We do have a tendency to think that it's the salt shaker and that we just stop salting our foods, that will help. Well, it will help. But most of the sodium that we take in through our eating habits is from processed foods that we eat.
You mean like a can of beans? Or do you mean like potato chips? Or is the answer yes?
The answer is yes, yes.
Okay.
Anything that's processed. So anything that comes in a can or anything that's been processed, you know, if we tend to try to eat more foods that are whole foods, that are fresh foods, or frozen foods, then they're going to be lower in sodium. Depending upon, of course, what that food is. So I've got a couple interesting examples, because what we want to strive for is less than 1,500 milligrams a day. And the only way we know how many milligrams we're eating is to actually look at food labels.
Okay.
And so we want to encourage people to continue to read that nutrition label on the products that you're buying, and look for that sodium, and either count the number of milligrams that you're eating during the day, or look at the daily total value, and that's a percentage. And the easy guideline for that, I believe, is think about the 5-20 rule that we've talked about before, but look at the sodium label, and if the total daily value is under 5%, it's a better choice, okay, of sodium when you're looking to watch sodium. If it's over 20%, then maybe not so good a choice, or maybe have that as a special occasion treat, or just don't eat it every day all the time, because we would want that to add up to 100%. So, you know, if you have 5 foods that are 20% of your daily total value of sodium, you've maxed out your limit, right?
Right.
Okay.
And you know, because of this show, when I go, I always look at the nutrition labels, and I was buying some frozen dinners, which are easy, convenient to eat for lunch.
Sure.
Wow, you talk about high sodium content.
Yes.
And then I'm buying soup. Wow, you talk about high sodium content. It's like 30%, 40% of your day. So that's like half your day right there on that one food.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm so proud of you for reading those labels. That's great, because, you know, people want to tend to read the front package and think that something's healthy because it says no trans fats, or it says, you know, some other product that's not added. But we really need to look at that nutrition label to find out what we're getting. So you've already named a couple of what the American Heart Association has labeled as the salty 6. So the salty 6 are those foods that are higher in sodium. So we have bread and rolls. That's the first thing. So even packaged breads, because it's processed, has higher sodium. I think that if you try to purchase a loaf of bread that's a whole wheat bread, I think you'll find that those are lower in sodium than the basic white bread, okay? Then cold cuts and cured meats. And what do we have at the holiday season, Bill?
Oh, a lot of summer sausage, bologna,
right,
caught up on it. Yeah.
Right. So enjoy it, but enjoy it in moderation. Try not to have it every day, all the time, okay? Pizza is another one of the salty 6. So when you think about the toppings that we put on pizza, the pepperoni, the sausage, the cheese, and even the bread that's in it, so that's why that's one of them. Poultry actually can be one of the salty sixes. And it's really based upon how you prepare that poultry, but that is one thing we normally think, oh, I'm getting a healthy choice, right? I'm
Chicken,
choosing,
yeah.
I'm choosing chicken, but we need to think about how that's prepared. So, brining is one of the ways that we recommend that you tenderize meat, but then that does add sodium.
Right.
So you just need to make that choice. Soup, you mentioned soup, and then sandwiches. And sandwiches is one of the salty sixes because we think about what we put in a sausage. We put processed deli meats. We put pickles, so they're higher in sodium. And we use bread, so that's higher in sodium. So that makes a sandwich a higher sodium choice.
So you just need to think about what you're doing.
Right.
And how it adds up throughout the day.
Right. And so another reference that I brought along with me, because I thought this was really interesting, about looking at your sodium intake through the day and what you might make different choices for. So you think, you know what, I'm making a good choice. I'm getting that English muffin egg sandwich, right? But that's 800 milligrams of sodium for breakfast. A better choice would be that bowl of oatmeal. That bowl of oatmeal and maybe raisins on the oatmeal or some other kind of fruit on the oatmeal, and you would not be adding any sodium to your day. So let's start the day out right. Let's try to pick a low sodium choice for breakfast and then move through the day. And then, snack time, we think, oh, I'm going to grab that bag of pretzels. That bag of pretzels is 400 milligrams of sodium. We would be better off going to the refrigerator and grabbing that container of yogurt and eating that yogurt, which was 8 ounces of yogurt, average about 125 milligrams of sodium. So you can see how there's different choices that you can make throughout the day that will be less sodium content, so that, if you want to have that special treat, if you want to have that cold cut sandwich at lunch, then make healthier choices for breakfast and snacks, and then do that cold cut sandwich for lunch.
Plan your day out a little bit about how you're going to eat.
Exactly.
Or know that if you ate soup at lunch and it was 40%, well, eat something less sodium.
Right.
And we're not saying sodium's bad, because you have to have sodium, correct?
You have to have some.
It's just the amount of sodium that we take in.
And then it also depends upon, are you a healthy adult or not? If you have a chronic disease, if you're diabetic, if you have hypertension or high blood pressure, if you're overweight, then it can be a challenge, because it can make that old heart work harder. And so, we don't want that. We want to be healthier. So watching our sodium is one thing that we need to do.
And we're talking about lowering your sodium. And if someone's on a low sodium diet, they already should be doing that.
That's
Somebody's
true.
on a low sodium diet. Is it different than the 1,500 milligrams?
I believe that it's 1,200. I'm not
so
exactly
but
sure,
it is
but
probably less.
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
So
everything has sodium in it.
right.
It's just the amount of what you have.
Right. So and this is something you always need to have that conversation with your physician, and make sure that you check in with them and ask them, what their guidelines are, or what their recommendations are for you, or you might want to ask to be referred to a dietitian. A registered dietitian is really the individual who has the nutrition knowledge that can help guide you through what are better choices for your specific situation and to better your health.
Well, and this is the holiday season.
Yeah.
And there's always nuts out. So maybe if you're buying the nuts, buy the ones with low sodium. With
Sure.
with less salt, or no salt.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to ask, do they even make no salt?
They do have
nuts?
unsalted nuts.
Okay.
They do have unsalted nuts. Now, one thing people need to realize is they taste different.
Sure.
They taste different. So, and sometimes people can get away with enjoying those more, using those in something, like use the unsalted nuts if you throw them into your salad, or use the unsalted nuts if you're making a snack mix, like a trail mix to take along, because then, the cereal might have a little bit of salty flavor to it and the nut doesn't, and you don't miss it as much. So it's all about those taste buds that we have, and know that they change all the time, and just getting used to a different taste.
So maybe you just got to change your habits a little bit and understand
Yeah.
that. If you're making banana bread, it calls for salt. Is there something you can use instead of salt?
No, you really need to use that salt in
Okay.
baking.
You're not using that
and
much,
usually,
but-
you know, it's like a half a teaspoon, or depending upon the recipe and the size that you're making, because there's a chemical properties of the salt that help with the baking process. So you don't want to alleviate that.
But maybe not salting your chicken as you're sautéing it. Use that Mrs. Dash or whatever the substitutes that
So
don't have
you
a lot
need
of
to
salt.
be careful when you pick seasonings, because you really need to look at that ingredient list on the seasoning container, because there are some seasonings that you would assume don't have any sodium in or any salt in, but that salt is an ingredient in that seasoning. So you really need to check. But there are some alternatives that do not have any sodium or salt in, and you can choose those and use those, and they can be very flavorful.
Jan, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
It's the holiday season, so
It
let's try
is.
and use a little less sodium in our diet. Just beware of, really, you just got to be aware of what you're doing. Is
Right.
what it comes down to.
Right.
All right, thank you very much. Jan Dougan, who is the Health and Human Sciences educator with Purdue Extension, has been our guest. Thank you for watching WJTS. We're local people watching local people.